welcome to Up Close with Carlos Sang, celebrating art, entertainment, and the human spirit. Welcome to another episode of Up Close with Carlos Sang. My next guest is one of my favourite actresses with one of the most powerful voices I've ever come across. She's got credits ranging from shows such as Les Miserables to Fiddler on the Roof to Evita to In the Heights. It's a huge privilege to be able to welcome the wonderful Emma Kingston to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So we're going through, a really interesting time in theatre right now. Various shows opening, some shows closing, of course, as well. How would you describe, the state of the industry right now?
I think at the moment we're possibly in the COVID lull. And I know that sounds like we should be over the hurdle, but I think that a lot of things that were either postponed or planned at the beginning of 2020, the planning and the happenings of those things happened in 2022 as the world was reopening. And I feel like this year, because the risk was so high in terms of just planning things, that I think people were happy to just get back to theatre. I think now we've seen a lot of revivals coming in, whether it be like Grease has come back, Dirty Dancing. And what I love about those shows is they're real fan favourites and they are just getting people back to the theatre. I just think the risk at the moment of sometimes putting on new things is huge right now with the cost of living. And, look at what was nominated for the Best New Musical at the Olivier's, all through subsidised theatre, that now subsequently a lot of those things will transfer, like Standing at the Sky's Edge, which is amazing. But I love the fact that subsidised theatre gave it an opportunity to have its moment and then it can sort of transfer. But I think this year, 2023, has been more about finding our footing again post-pandemic.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting to see, what's happening across the industry right now. You're known for having one of the most powerful voices in the business too. Do you feel like, there are expectations on you, to riff and to do these, vocal acrobatics when you perform as well?
I have never been one for sort of being goaded by the audience necessarily. Look, don't get me wrong. Sometimes there are moments where it's nice to be a bit indulgent, but otherwise I think, if you're doing a concert performance, it's very different to playing a character. And I think that if you're playing a character, you got to think about where's your character from? Like, does this riff make sense? Does this embellishment make sense? And I think if it doesn't, and it doesn't serve the character or the story, it's not necessary. And even when I teach students with singing, I'm so much more interested in tone over vocal gymnastics. Range is one thing, but you can't teach tone.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. I know that, one of your dream roles, for the longest time was to play Julie Jordan in Carousel. I was curious, how was that experience, finally getting to play her, at Kilworth House last year?
It was so cathartic and therapeutic for me that it's one of my favorite shows of all time. I think that the bench scene might be the best 10 minutes of theatre ever written, in terms of through narrative and how it goes from scene to song to scene to song, and the storytelling that's involved in it is just extraordinary. And to be able to perform that score and to really understand the nuances behind songs like What's the Use of Wondering, it was just such an excellent experience. That score is unmatched. That's the music I really grew up listening to. And that's the music I was really trained on. I think because of the earlier moments and shows in my career, which were amazing, but when you do shows like Priscilla, people then go, oh, but you want to play Julie Jordan? And I thought, well, doing Priscilla for me is actually more outside of my comfort zone than doing Julie Jordan. It's just that that's the first thing you've seen me do. So I don't like to put myself in boxes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Carousel, as you say, it's known as being one of the greatest musicals ever written. But it's definitely faced some, criticism in later years about how it deals with darker elements of the story. How challenging was it, playing this role for a modern audience? And did anything surprise you about playing this character too?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do talk about the darker elements of Carousel. And I think my answer to that would be, have we got to a point in 2023 where domestic abuse doesn't exist? The answer is no. Have we got to a place of like male female equality, or even the idea of toxic masculinity where men feel that they're not allowed to express themselves and therefore they turn to doing things that might harm them? That I don't necessarily think these themes are dated. And I think if we lean into those themes rather than shying away from them, we can absolutely shine a light on how it relates to today. I think if we try and sugarcoat those moments or pretend that, they never existed, that's where we're in danger of creating a false narrative.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, did anything, surprise you about Julie Jordan as well when you're playing her, because she's such an iconic role and I feel like people have so many preconceptions about her too.
I think the way that I wanted to approach her, and I think what initially did surprise me, is that she is exceptionally strong. And you got to think this is a girl who got fired, left her job, and stayed out all night to hang out with someone of her own accord. She was told, like, you'll be fired if you don't come back now. And she went, okay. And I think rather than playing her as someone meek who has gone, oh God, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm just, I'm just not going to go back because I don't want him to think that I'm, under the thumb or something. No, I think everything has to come from a decision that she's making for herself. And I think even with regards to Billy, she is making a decision to stay with him. That is kind of an audience's choice then of how you want to view that. But look at people in abusive relationships. If everyone left an abusive relationship, we wouldn't have need for charities that deal with domestic abuse. Domestic abuse during the pandemic wouldn't have gone up. I think there is a more interesting way of understanding her character through why she decides to stay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like the psychology of Julie Jordan is so interesting, the choices that she makes, throughout her relationship and how,
Yeah,
even, 15 years after he passes away, she still stands by him too.
100%. And, we never see her with another man. People talk about the line, that something can hurt, but it doesn't hurt at all. I can't remember the specifics. And sort of the way we wanted to deal with that is that generationally, we educate almost the generations above us. Louise says, mother, is it possible that someone can hurt you real bad, but it not hurt at all? And when Julie replies, yes, it can happen, we played it that Louise rejects that idea and sort of says, I'm actually understanding this as no, it's not okay. And then Julie is sort of left with that, oh, I didn't explain myself very well of how like I'm feeling. And I think that is something that generationally we grow, with regards to mental health, with regards to consent, with regards, to all these things, that with every generation comes a bigger voice. I hope that nuance was sort of put across in the version that we tried to do, but certainly that was our thinking behind it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely always going to be a challenge, staging Carousel, finding a way to, present the material in a way that is relevant for a modern audience. And Kilworth House is, such a unique theatre too. It's sort of in the middle of nowhere, but attracts audiences from all around.
Yeah.
Did the experience playing there feel, particularly different to playing in, a traditional West End theatre or somewhere else?
Yeah, you are at battle with the elements the entire time. For some reason, it's much colder in Lutterworth than it is in London. So, when you're backstage, it's dealing with the cold, how you manage your breathing, how you stay hydrated, pollen, hay fever. I think just being outside is a different thing altogether.
Yeah, we recently saw you also sort of outside at West End Live as well. You were performing with the Little Big Things. Does this mean that we can expect you to be in that show too when it opens later this year?
No, I'm afraid not. the wonderful composer and writer Nick Butcher is a very good friend of mine. And I was a guest at his Adele's concert back in 2019. And we sort of premiered The Little Big Things as just a group of, helpful friends putting his music out there into the world. And he's been wonderful in asking me to come and do some session work on it and just be an ambassador for the show rather than being someone in the show. But I can't wait to go and see it. I really think it's going to be something special.
Yeah, the show's already getting a lot of buzz. It'll be Soho Place's first musical since it's opened. And over your career history, interestingly, you've not really like originated, many parts as well. Is this something that you'd like to do more of as well going forwards?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's the dream. That is the absolute dream. I've had the privilege of sort of being in 2 original London casts with In the Heights and The Band's Visit. But I would love for someone to just write something for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I also really wanted to talk to you about Children of Eden as well, which was such a special occasion. I know, of course, Alice Fearn was, of course, initially scheduled to play Eve and Mama Noah.
Unbelievable Alice Fearn.
Yeah. Yeah, can you tell us about, getting that call, being offered to play that part for that very special concert?
Yeah, I mean, it was October 2021. And actually, I was supposed to be in America that weekend because I was a bridesmaid at my cousin's wedding.
Oh.
And America at that point said no one can come in until November because of the COVID regulations. So I actually hadn't made any plans that weekend, but my family were holding on to the very last second in case the rules changed and we can suddenly just get on a plane and go. But we couldn't. So it meant that I suddenly had this 5-day, period of time where I was completely free. And there were weird things that had happened that week. Like I decided a week beforehand I have my nails done quite often. And I decided to get green nails. I never, ever wear green nails. And like Children of Eden wasn't even on my radar because, Rob is a very good friend of mine who produced it and it's already cast and, all the rest of it. And I was still holding out that I was going to be going to the States. And they started rehearsals on the Monday. I'm getting on with my life. And I think on the Wednesday, the performances were on the Sunday. Rob messaged me and just said, how well do you know Children of Eden? And I said, I used to sing Ain't It Good at college. And I've heard Spark of Creation once or twice. But other than that, I don't know it really at all. Mm. And he said, okay, Alice isn't feeling very well today. And I went, Alice is like me. She's a machine. Mm. I went, she needs a day. She'll feel better. I promise you, it'll be absolutely fine. That was sort of the last of it. On the Thursday, I get a message from Rob and Alice. Alice was like, mate, I'm really, really not feeling very well. She was like, I think I'll be all right by Sunday. And I said to Rob, I was like, look, if it makes you feel any better and it helps the cast, I don't mind coming in to just, you don't need to promote me. You just, pay me a day rate and I'll come in, I'll stand in and I'll just read the script, help everyone out with their scenes and stuff. And sometimes as well, for cast members, you feel at ease to get better quicker if you know that everything else is going to be okay. So I was like, I'll just come in today. Alice will be all right by tomorrow. It'll be all fine. And we're all friends. That's what was so lovely about that experience, that, you never want to take joy in someone's health and unwellness at the time. And then it got to the Friday morning. On the Thursday, I will add, I didn't sing any of the score. I just literally went in the afternoon, read some scenes with people. And on the Friday, Alice sent me a message just saying, I think I'm going to have to call it. I can't see a world in that I'm going to feel better by Sunday. And it's not fair to everyone else if I'm still going, And I went, oh, but what does this mean? And we sort of all had a conversation whereby we went, okay, I'm going to do this then. And bless Alice, she really wasn't very well. She ended up being quite unwell for about 3 weeks. And look, these things happen. Like they just do. And Alice could not have been a bigger support to me that weekend, which was just amazing. And we've been friends for a while, but also I'm a pretty big fan of Alice Fearn and always have been. You know, she went to Mount View and graduated before me. So it was always sort of like, you know, someone to aspire to. Not to mention, she's a ridiculous talent. Yeah. So then I sort of went in on the Friday and we had to do a staged rehearsal for Stephen Schwartz. And that pretty much was, I sight read a lot of the score. So I didn't even have much time. I had one note bash of like maybe half of the show, and the rest of it I sight read. We did the whole show start to finish for Stephen. Then we worked a few bits and pieces. And on the Saturday we had a sits probe, Sunday 2 shows. So it was fight or flight, go for it. And probably one of the most rewarding 4 days of my career.
It was such an incredible performance. It was such a great show. I loved it so
Thank
much.
you.
I wish I got to see it again. Yeah, I mean, how challenging was it, to learn, a character, well, 2 characters in your case, and, to learn this score in such a short space of time?
I think I was lucky in that I already knew Ain't It Good, which really is one of that character's hardest numbers. Spark of Creation, I didn't know the words, but I knew the structure of the song. I had never heard the song Children of Eden in my life, which for me, as a real musical lover, I was sort of shocked at myself. I'm very, very lucky that I read music, and I read music very well. So, considering the concert was on book, and, I also had the support of like the entire cast was so behind me. They were amazing. Rob being one of my best friends as well, that I think when you're in that position of going on impulse, you know that making mistakes are inevitable. So you have to just abandon your control and go, what will be, will be. And I think as a result, I didn't overthink anything, and I just went with it to the best of my ability, and just the outcome was pretty good, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, as I say, it was such a gorgeous, gorgeous evening. And yeah, as you say, Rob Houchen, super talented, performer, vocalist, and of course producer, and on that occasion, director too. What is it like, getting to work with Rob Houchen?
What is it like working with Rob Houchen? We have been friends now for nearly a decade, and I can't even believe I'm saying that. Because when we get together, we feel just as ridiculous and silly. We are unbelievably honest with each other, which is what I love about our friendship in work and in life. We very much seek advice from each other, and we really support each other and understand each other's talents, strengths, weaknesses. That he's just such a gorgeous human and exceptionally talented. And I love seeing him succeed. And if I get to do that alongside him, then wonderful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a really special friendship. And, over recent years, we've seen musical theatre concerts becoming more popular. We've seen Witches of Eastwick, Chess. Later this year, we've got Love Never Dies and Death Note coming as well. Why do you think musical theatre concerts are becoming more trendy?
I think it's far more, again, I think about getting people back to the theatre. I think putting on a big scale production at the moment is risky for producers. Whereas I think if you can, spark a little bit of interest, look what happened with Bonnie and Clyde. That, that started as a 2-show concert, and then it ran at 2 different theatres and is going on a UK tour. So I think that sometimes a concert production, you never know what it can lead to in terms of, are people talking about it? Does it get the buzz? Does it get the interest? And I think I always try and think of things from a business perspective as well as just a creative perspective, because, what we do is show business. And I think if you start to get in the minds of producers, you understand why concerts, they bring a little spark for a moment that then they leave people wanting more. And if people really want more, then you gauge, maybe this has some legs. And as a producer, how can I make this work? And then you can go on a journey with that. I also think it gives people an opportunity to perform in roles that you can assemble a cast of your favorite people for one day much easier than you can for a whole year. So you can get your top 5 people to do the concert, whereas you may not get those people in a year's contract because people have commitments and things like that. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like these, concerts are often, very, glitzy affairs, and it's interesting. Last year you did, perhaps one of the most minimalist, least glitzy shows, the band's visit at the Don's
yeah,
house. Yeah, what was it that drew you to that show too?
I think I'd heard of the band's visit when it first opened in the States, and I actually hadn't seen the film. And I remember thinking, a musical that's set in Israel. Okay. I mean, like, I'm Jewish and I go to Israel all the time and have done as a kid and all the rest of it. And it's never really the topic of conversation unless people are talking about politics. And here's a piece that is just about human connection that happens to be set in an Israeli desert. And I just think the concept of that is so beautiful that I knew when it was announced, I just had to be a part of it. I wanted to be in that room. I wanted to be a representative for that part of the world to say, look, what you may see in the media is not the reality of every day. That my main aim with it, and I remember saying this to the cast, is that I want us to be able to go out and say we represented 2 different cultures to the best of what they are, so that people can go away and go, oh my God, what a heart-wrenching and gorgeous story, and not focus on the other things that were nothing to do with the band's visit.
Yeah, definitely. It was another like really special show. It felt very unique. Being in that room, it felt very profound. And yeah, over the years, you've really created a name for yourself in the industry. Was it hard, having to share the role of Dina at all?
Look, I knew when I was auditioning for it that I probably fell in the young category. Katrina Lenk, I think when she played it on Broadway, was 42. I might be wrong with that, but I think she was definitely in her early 40s. And I am over 10 years younger than that. In relation to the story, it was going to depend with the way that it was cast and all the rest of it. And, Dina's lived a life. Not that I haven't, but you obviously, with more time, you've lived more of a life. And the minute I met Miri Masika, like, do you know what? Even before she said any of the script or sang any of the songs, I went, that's Dina. Not that I'm not, but Miri was special and perfect. And also just such a huge supporter of mine. She watched one of my shows. She asked me if she could, obviously. And I said, oh my God, of course. Because I know for Miri that she wanted to be there in the audience to witness what she was a part of. It had absolutely nothing to do with comparison. It was just, we all felt so strongly about telling the story as an ensemble that everyone was important, whatever part you played in the show. And we all really felt it as a family.
Yeah.
And that's what made it really special. And that's why, Miri played Dina, I played Dina. That's sort of all it is.
Yeah. It's really interesting to hear, you talk about, your friendships with, fellow actors in the industry, whether it be, Rob Houchen or Alice Fearn or Miri. Do you ever feel, at competition, with your peers at all in the industry too?
I always think there's an element of competition with anyone in the industry because you know that you're always going to be up against certain people for certain roles. That's just the nature of the business. I just think with any walk of life and any friendships, your friends are your chosen family and, choose wisely. And I think we all have very good intuition, hopefully, when it comes to our friends. I keep very small circles of people. That's not to say that you don't have like your wider circle of colleagues, but I love when my friends succeed. I love it. I love it. I love going to see my friends in shows. And, I have quite a big group of friends outside of the industry as well. And, one of them is training to be a cardiologist. And one of them is starting a new job in tech, and another person is starting their rotations in a different hospital, that you go, I love seeing people excel at something they are passionate about. And I've always been drawn to people who are passionate and ambitious and want the best for themselves. And as a result of wanting the best for yourself, you kind of want the best for other people. It's not about you trying to get ahead. It's not about you trying to shine brighter than someone else. Like, stars in the sky can all shine the same to make like an amazing skyline.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to hear you say that. And you've been working in this industry for the best part of 10 years now too. How would you say the industry has changed over that time as well?
I think we still have a way to go, but in terms of representation, I think we're on the right track. I know for me that for some of us who maybe fall in the in-between category of being part of ethnic minorities, but I would never say that I am a person of color, but I am from a very unique ethnic minority group. Two groups, my mum being Latin American and the fact that I'm Jewish. For me, with regards to representation, I think we still have a way to go with regards to making sure that everyone feels represented.
Yeah. Are there any roles that you see, in the musical theatre canon that you see as being off limits to you? Or do you feel like, you should have a foot in the door in any show?
No, there are some shows that are definitely off limits to me. I would never, ever in a million years expect to be playing Dina in Dreamgirls. Like, never. That's not my story to tell. I would never want to play Motormouth in Hairspray. That's not my story to tell. Shows like Get Up, Stand Up, Ain't Too Proud, Memphis, they are not my stories. Bombay Dreams, not my story. But if you look at the shows that I've done with regards to Evita in the Heights, Fiddler on the Roof, Band's Visit, very much my story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so great to see so much variety out there. Just as a last question, what would you say is the best part about being Emma Kingston?
Oh my God, I don't know. I'm very grateful that I have two sides of my life that wouldn't necessarily complement each other, but they definitely keep me grounded. I have a very, very strong group of friends outside of the industry and a very strong group of friends within the industry. And I think having both keeps me very grounded and helps me feel like not all of my worth has to be in my work. What's the best part about being Emma Kingston? Oh God, I don't know. I can sing a variety of different material. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that sounds amazing. I think friendship is really important. Having good people around you is very important. And yeah, if you can sing as well, then that's perfect. But yeah, Emma Kingston, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.